in the Hampstead storm of August 14, 1975, a brutal and relentless rainfall unleashed a massive 170.8 millimeters of rain in under 3 hours. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. Today we travel to Hampstead, England, for what was considered to be a once-in-20,000-year event. This day in weather history. The rain started at exactly 5:15 British Standard Time and ended at 10 to 8 that night, less than 3 hours later. The storm was a sluggishly slow mover over Hampstead Heath, so slow that it barely moved at all for the entire duration of its heaviest output. The Society's weather recording station must have been close to the point of the maximum rainfall because it recorded that 170.8 millimeters, something comparable to 3 months' worth of rain in under 3 hours. Although it was a slow-moving low, it did spread the wealth around fairly. Just a short way across the heath at Golders Hill Park, they measured 131.3 millimeters, while 3 other gauges in the vicinity, that at Lanchester Road in Highgate, Waterloo Park, and Parliament Hill, also logged more than 100 millimeters each. This brought about a very rapid onset of severe flooding. It happened in under 5 minutes. 4 of London's mainline railway stations were flooded and closed. A large part of the London Underground was brought to a standstill as tunnels were flooded and the electricity supply failed. Temperatures at the time were close to 30 degrees. With this, the Hampstead storm grows from a single cumulus cloud into a cumulonimbus with at least 3 cells. It's becoming more of a supercell. It literally was a confluence of air masses over the east and southeast that was triggered by the hot air pushed by the actual low, combined with some sea breeze convergence. In meteorology parlance, we would refer to this as a heat-triggered or air mass thunderstorm. Now here is where things turn truly bizarre. It is estimated that despite the point of maximum rainfall being likely within a few hundred meters of the rain gauge at Hampstead Observatory, it is highly unlikely that the site of the gauge coincided with the spot that actually received the most rainfall. Speculation was that the Hampstead rain gauge under-recorded the actual quantity of precipitation because many of the large hailstones that were falling at the time might have literally bounced out of the gauge's funnel. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. But there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective. But oftentimes, they will include visuals from that day's event, from when it happened, in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. There is every reason to believe that somewhere closer to 175 or 200 millimeters of rain could actually have fallen. When running these numbers, they indicate that such a large quantity of rain in under 3 hours probably occurs about once every 20,000 years at Hampstead, although the margin of error on either side of that figure would be very large, based on it being only a rudimentary supposition at best. As a point of reference, there has been only one other occasion anywhere in the British Isles where more rain has fallen in such a short time. It was back on May 19th, 1989, when within just 2 hours, heavy rain fell at Walshaw Dean Reservoir in West Yorkshire. But this still has a haze of doubt as to the authenticity of that data. And now the aftermath. There was 1 fatality caused by a flooded basement. There were 2 injured, caused by lightning strikes whilst sheltering beneath a tree. Not a good idea. And 250, thanks to the flooding, made homeless. This in the Hampstead storm that happened August 14th, 1975, this day in weather history. Hey, do you like the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea, go right now to wherever you're listening to me and rate us if you would, please. It's on a 5-star system, and we would love as many stars as you can afford. So rate us, but then also review us. This way we can always stay on top of how you'd like to see the show evolve. Then remember to subscribe to this podcast. Click the subscribe or follow button right there on the very same podcast homepage you're listening on. You'll be immediately reminded that the next day is ready to listen to, and you also have access to every episode in the archives. It dates back to June 1st of 2020, so there is a lot that we got to get caught up on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is August 15th. We're going back to 1997 to revisit the devastating Williams Lake, Ontario F2 tornado. This day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.